The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace, 2022 Interpretations. The last time we discussed this book, it was in 2017. So a number of years have passed since I discovered the book and integrated the information to deeper degree to bring forth some financial goals, as well as applying the same information into different areas of my life. Thus, I feel it's important for us to revisit this book again and discuss some of the findings and relate it over to what he shared so we can understand it to a deeper degree. What I found is that this book provides a lot of insight as to getting your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual alignment so that you can go and bring forth your riches from a place of ideal way you are meant to live, purpose, prosperity, and so forth. So fundamentally, there are three key insights that I primarily work with, and I want to integrate all throughout the video. Number one, transcending the idea of competition and going more into creativity. Number two, developing a deeper degree of presence on the day-to-day activities. Number three, the awareness of, through certain ideas like transcending competition, creating from your vision in the now, and deep presence, we find opportunities that present themselves, very similar to what we learned in Acres of Diamonds. So he says, the object of all life is development, and everything that lives has an inalienable right to all the development it is capable of attaining. So he speaks from the perspective of higher degrees of realization, higher degrees of awareness, realizing that we can always learn more so, understand things more so. And one of the opportunities that we have to learn and understand ourselves, how reality works, others, circumstance, information, is to the opportunity of prosperity. As he says, there's nothing wrong in wanting to get rich. The desire for riches is really the desire for a richer, fuller, and more abundant life, and that desire is praiseworthy. He also says there are three motives for which we live. We live for the body, we live for the mind, and we live for the soul. And no one of the three, body, mind, or soul, can live fully if either of the other is cut short of full life and expression. So in these statements, what he's referring to is living in full expression of the prosperity that you are. Now, this is very similar to our discussion we had on Thursday. I'll put a link in the description to that, in which we talk about allowing the creative imagination to flow through us. Now, having the desire for riches plays an important part of our understanding in the utilization, the conscious utilization of the two gifts of speech and mind, inner speech and mind, because it allows us to work with the formless or original substance, as he speaks of here. He says, there is no limit to the supply of formless stuff or original substance. The universe is made out of it, but it was not all used in making the universe. The space in, through, and between the forms of the visible universe are permeated and filled with the original substance, with the formless stuff, with the raw materials of all things. 10,000 times as much has been made, might still be made. And even then, we should not have exhausted the supply of universal raw material. Nature is an inexhaustible storehouse of riches. The supply will never run short. Original substance is alive with creative energy and is constantly producing more forms. So, through the creative expression of innovation or artistic expression, it's translated over to riches. In other words, very relatable to what we learn from The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, in which he also said, instead of competing, create. And our role in bringing forth riches is to create, innovate, bring forth product, service, expressions, creative expressions, and receive fair compensation in exchange for those products or services. What we're really doing is we're pulling ideas from within ourselves, the infinite intelligence that we are one with, in our imagination, and we're committing to those ideas, and those ideas are valuable for others. And people want to pay us for the products or services that we create. And since he says that nature is an inexhaustible storehouse of riches, we want to look at it from the perspective of mind. We have ideas, we have innovation, and we can be the expression of this innovation. Now, he talks about this as thinking a certain way, as he calls it. So let's get into discussion about this. He says, thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks, and a thought or form in its substance produces the form. Original substance move according to its thoughts. Every form and process you see in nature is the visible expression of a thought in original substance. As the formless stuff thinks of a form, it takes that form. As it thinks of a motion, it makes that motion. That is the way all things were created. We live in a thought world, which is part of a thought universe. The thought of a moving universe extends throughout formless substance, and the thinking stuff moving according to that thought took the form of systems of planets and maintains that form. So we're connecting here to the power of our thinking. And we want to think certain kinds of ideas, or we want to encourage certain kinds of thinking, such as the desire for riches is really the desire for a richer, fuller, and more abundant life. And that desire is praiseworthy. When a person begins to encourage this kind of thinking, they automatically start to come up with ideas of how to turn their thoughts into something tangible and concrete of value. Could be a product, could be a service, could be a creative expression, could be some kind of innovation. Because the desire is inherent within us to live a richer, fuller, and more abundant life, we seek to express our thoughts and translate that over to the reciprocal of richer, fuller, and more abundant in riches. So this way of thinking, we also want to combine it with what he said here. Nature is an inexhaustible storehouse of riches. So we have the divine connection within, as we talked about in last Thursday's video, infinite intelligence in which we receive ideas, hunches, inspiration for innovation. And what we want to do is honor these ideas, see them into completion. So we'll talk about this in a moment, of how we go about doing it, working with this book. He says, to do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step towards getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth regardless of appearances. So the first step is the recognition that you desire to be rich. You desire to experience a life of riches, abundance, prosperity. And we want to identify with this, essentially say, I am too, those things, and not add anything after I am, like, I am worthy of riches, but what if this, and perhaps that, or some kind of doubt, indecision, or any kind of interpretation after that. Only I am prosperous, or I am a conduit of divine expression of innovation, or something like that, in terms of truth, regardless of appearances. Because anytime we add anything additional to I am, such as fears, doubt, indecision, thinking, such as, I don't know if this is going to happen, but this person might hold me back, or there's too much competition, we are thinking or we are interpreting based on five sensory appearances. And what we want to do is think from imagination, which is I am. So he says this power can only be acquired by getting hold of the basic fact, which is behind all appearances. And that fact is that there is one thinking substance from which and by which all things are made. And you within your own mind call upon what is true by your thinking. So we want to think in what he refers to here as increasing life. So let's get a little deeper into this. He says, intelligent substance will make things for you, but it will not take things away from someone else and give them to you. So perhaps this is some fears, doubts, indecision-based thinking regarding riches. A person might think that in order to acquire riches, they have to take it away from someone else. And so what we're really looking at here is transcending past interpretations of competition or taking away from another person to bring forth your riches, and recognize that there's an inexhaustible opportunity for the formless stuff to take motion through you via your thinking. And through this, in which we see this visible world is made of, we recognize that we can also be the conduit and create or allow this creativity to express through us by allowing. And the allowing really is in the what we are saying I am too, what we are identifying within ourselves. In this case, we want to identify with certain thought processes, such as, it will not take things away from another person. Encourage that kind of thought process. The innovation, the products or services that I create add to this world, add to the lives of others. He says you become a creator, not a competitor. You are going to get what you want, but in such a way that when you get it, every other man will have more than he has now. Now, this way of thinking actually creates reality from that thinking. Because, as he says here, the power can only be acquired by getting hold of the basic fact, which is behind all appearances, and that fact is that there is one thinking substance from which and by which all things are made. And who is the only interpreter? And we look within ourselves and we find the answer. You can read this book and interpret it, or interpret what I'm saying, from any different perspective that you desire or that you want to. And whatever it is that you interpret, being what was said to you through this book or through our conversations or anywhere for that matter, that we identify with, is what we are going to experience more of. And so we are the one that controls the invisible, or as he says here, the formless stuff. Through our thinking, we see it in our expression. So we want to say, you do not have to take anything away from anyone to bring forth your riches. You can be the creator or conduit of divine expression or conduit of innovative expression and not see reality as competitive or others as competitive to you. Now, this might be something that may be new for us to think this way, but I promise you, as I've been working with this for years, that as you begin to identify with this kind of way of thinking, you'll actually notice that you'll find your own creative and innovative ways to do things. And so to further this, he says you do not have to cheat, nor do you have to take advantage. You do not need to let any man work for you for less than he earns. Again, perhaps certain kinds of thinking patterns that we've identified with. So what he's suggesting here is these certain kinds of increasing life thinking patterns, which is thinking a certain way, which allows us to express creatively or innovatively into what it is that we're doing to produce the wealth, the results, the finances, the riches, and so forth. he says, never look at the visible supply. Always look at the limitless riches in formless substance, in our imagination. What we see in our imagination, what we, you could say, receive within, ideas, hunches, and inspirations in our imagination, is what we want to commit to and allow that to be certainty in imagination, which allows us to look beyond all appearances here in this visible world. So he says, never look at the visible supply, always look at the limitless riches in formless substance, and know that they are coming to you as fast as you can receive and use them. Nobody, by concerning the visible supply, can prevent you from getting what is yours. Now, what we want to do is encourage these kinds of ways of thinking a certain way, because then we'll start to actually realize it in the day-to-day. So let's look at the day-to-day, this section here, all mind into present. He says, as you go in the certain way, opportunities will come to you in increasing number. So just changing those thinking patterns around, identifying with the true thinking patterns that are resonant with the vision, your goal, we start to see and experience reality from different perspectives. And so he says, as you go on in the certain way, opportunities will come to you in increasing number, and you will need to be very steady in your faith and purpose, and to keep in close touch with the all mind by reverent gratitude. So this holds a key distinction that allowed me to really deeply work with this information here, and finally bring us into this conversation here where I'm sharing this with you. So I want to share with you my 5 key distinctions that really allowed me to work with this information practically. Okay, so 5 of them here, which we're going to relate to what he refers to as all mind by reverent gratitude, relating it over to certain thinking patterns that we want to encourage, all the way back to the beginning here where he says the universe is made out of it, formless stuff or original substance. But it was not all used in the making of the universe. So there's opportunity for allowing this to express through us in the following 5 ways. So number 1, he says, do not bother as to whether yesterday's work was well done or ill done. Do today's work well. So what he's saying is the opportunities that we have right now, the thing that we're doing right now, is exactly where we need to be to get to our destination. It is here right now. This is the ideal thing to do. And whatever you're going to do after this, that's the ideal thing to do. Because in thinking in that way, which he refers to as a certain way, that thing becomes the step in the right direction towards increasing opportunities. Now, I want to reflect back on my experience. What I also noticed is that there were certain times in my past where I had the same experience. I remember there was a certain time while my IT business was growing where I felt I wasn't having enough clients or business opportunities. And I just said to myself, I'm just going to focus on these activities that I'm doing, and I'm going to do them really well, whatever the activities were at that time. I don't remember. And I started to notice that I was getting emails, phone calls. People were inquiring about services. And I don't know the conscious explanation for that, although I believe he articulates it really well. Because what he says is, as you go on in the certain way, opportunities will come to you in an increasing number. Some way, somehow. So, number 2, in the certain way. He says, do not try to do tomorrow's work now. There will be plenty of time to do that when you get to it. So what he's saying is releasing from the overthinking and saying, how is it that I'm going to create this riches? I've never done it before. And maybe thinking about 100 different steps or potentialities leading to unnecessary complexity and convolution, and rather going back into valuing what it is that you're doing right now. Number 3, hold with faith and purpose the vision of yourself in the better environment, but act upon your present environment with all your heart and with all your strength and with all your mind. So a person might say, okay, I would rather have these kinds of clients and this kind of business opportunity, and have some ideas of what they're going to experience when they get to the destination of their vision. But what they want to recognize is where they are right now. That's the power of working with this process that he outlines here. Where the individual is right now is the place that they need to be, because he says, hold with faith and purpose the vision of yourself in a better environment. In other words, faith is knowing, loyalty to the unseen reality. Some way, somehow, you're going to get there. Feeling of the wish fulfilled. We've said it in many different ways. But recognize that your present moment, with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind, is exactly where you need to be right now. Number 4, begin to do what you can do where you are, and you must do all that you can do where you are. So in other words, do the thing that you're doing right now, whatever it is, the task, the project, and really commit to it and be present to it and see it to completion. That's the goal. And after that, the next task, the next project, the next opportunity will reveal itself, and do that really well. Now, I'm reflecting back on an experience in my life prior to reading this book where when I read it again, it started to make even more sense. How all of a sudden you get a phone call and someone says, hey, I got an opportunity for you. There's a client that needs this service. You go over there to the client site and you perform the service so well, and you notice that they take appreciation for that. They notice it and they say, I would like to refer you to some of my clients. Or, hey, I know somebody that you can talk to that might actually want to bring you in, or might know somebody that knows others. I remember distinctly when this happened. There was an IT company that took over some of my IT clients when I transitioned away from the business in 2013. And I was on the client's site, and a woman came up to me, and she said, oh, my husband also runs an IT business. You guys should get in contact. You should talk. So from being really present at that particular opportunity, because I remember I used to think this way, I used to always say to myself, to the best of my ability, now I do it more so, that what I'm doing right now is the most important thing right now. And there's nowhere else I want to be rather than where I am right now. And I'm going to do this with the greatest level of presence, a deepest level of integration, of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual as I can. Because this is exactly what I need to do. This is a door, but I also recognize that this is an important part of the journey, and I value the journey as much as the destination. Now, when she put me in contact with him, we ended up, like my IT business and his IT business, we ended up doing a number of deals together, some joint ventures. We referred clients to each other. And then when I decided to transition away from my IT business, he took on, or his business, they had a bigger business than mine, took on a number of my clients as part of a revenue split. And so I want to continue encouraging this thought process within myself and also with you. And I would also like you to, as we're going through this, what he's sharing with us, recognize where this has happened in your life as well. And also recognize that if you can replicate it once, if you could do it once, you could do it again and again and again. And this can be a way of life. And I would say it's a very flow-based and rewarding way of life because you value the journey where you are right now and the destination. And you recognize what we mentioned earlier is there's nothing wrong with wanting to be rich. The desire for riches is really the desire for a richer, fuller, and more abundant life, and that desire is praiseworthy. The richer, fuller, and abundant life is now, in this moment. We want to recognize that it is here in this moment. That's why he would say, and to keep in close touch with the all-mind by reverent gratitude. And then number 5, he says, do all that you can do in a perfect manner every day, but do it without haste, worry, or fear. Go as fast as you can, but never hurry. So he's talking about effectiveness, optimization, valuing. One of the things that I realized by actually going through this process for the entrepreneurial world is that a certain level of filter, realization, a lens I started to look at my day-to-day. I recognize that with everything that I can do, everything that I'm committing to, in some shape or form, in part or in whole, in varying combination, I could either do it and optimize it more so, I could delegate it, I could automate it, or I could eliminate it. And I could do one of those things or a combination of those things. And what I started to notice when I started to ask myself that question while deeply present is that I would be able to do things in a lot more of an effective way, as he refers to as perfect manner, without haste or worry, but going as fast as I can, because I was essentially transcending time and space by working through this lens, delegating, automating, eliminating, or doing it in an optimal way. I started to bring forth awareness on resources, relationships, tools, technologies, and I would find more effective ways of optimizing the business. This would then allow me to put out more output, which would bring forth more yield, riches, money, as well as it would allow me to also, as he says here, as you go in the certain way, opportunities will show up. Now, this was also said in Sun Tzu's Art of War. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. So it was very revealing for me to revisit this book after a number of years. And I felt that when I was reading this book, after I was going through it since 2017, I haven't revisited it, that in a way I was reading a new book. And I recognize and I understand it even more so as we've been discussing that when we take some information like this and we apply it, the key word is we apply it, we not only produce the results, but we also understand it even more so. And we recognize that this information goes deeper than we might think. And there's different layers of thinking. This understanding goes even deeper. And I believe the reason why is because through the experiential integration of what I'm suggesting here and what he's suggesting in the book, we begin to integrate to a deeper degree what he says here. To do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step toward getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth regardless of appearances. So let's go a little deeper into that. To think truth rather or regardless of appearances. So that means that we're essentially painting the now from our vision by looking at this five sensory experience and saying, some way, somehow, this is in harmony and in contribution to my vision. So thus, I'm going to do these 5 things. I'm going to not bother with yesterday's work, whether it was done perfectly and this and that. I'm going to focus on what I'm doing right now and do it really well. I'm not going to think about what's going to show up tomorrow. I recognize that what is meant to show up tomorrow will show up as part of the journey to realizing my vision. I'm going to hold faith and purpose to this vision while in this environment, recognizing the present environment is something that is going to be in contribution, and I will be here with all my heart, with all my strength, with all my mind. As a result of it, I will do all that I can with what I have right now, working with the relationships, resources, opportunities, and so forth, and you can run it through that filter I mentioned earlier, to get to higher degrees of number 5, where he says, do all that you can do in a perfect manner every day, which is recognize that you can optimize, delegate, automate, or eliminate in combination, in part or in whole, depending on what it is that you're doing. thus stimulating higher degrees of creativity, or as we discussed in Thursday's video, creative imagination, and you'll find that all these answers and these insights and optimizations were within yourself. And you begin to live more so from within out. Reality becomes an expression of the creativity and innovation that is inherent within you. So I trust you've enjoyed today's 2022 interpretation of The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. Let's go ahead and conclude this with some autosuggestion. You could say, I realize that the intelligent substance that makes things for me actually contributes to the lives of others through me, as I express as the creator. Through this process, I add to others in the form of creative expression and innovation. This provides advantage to others in which I receive fair compensation. Through the process, I'm able to transcend past competition and visible supply and always look to the limitless riches in formless substance and know that they are showing up as fast as I can receive them by remaining in this present moment, valuing the task, the opportunity at hand. As a result, opportunities present themselves. I'm able to move forward with these opportunities automatically, maintain this harmony and flow to bring forth the riches and prosperity that I desire. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.